Somebody could give me a thumbs up. Perfect, thank you. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about getting ready for academic work, and hopefully some strategies that are going to be really, and tools actually, that are going to be very useful to you to support your learning. Especially now that we've come back to quite an unusual stage of college, I suppose, where we're not quite in hybrid, we're not quite face-to-face. Some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today are available to you in your Ask DS module. This is a module that we have in Blackboard. It's very easy to find it. If you go to the module search box on the right-hand side there and click on into module search and type in disability service, click on go. And this will bring up a listing as just one item in there in blue. It's Ask DS. If you click on Ask DS, enroll, and then submit, and when you go back to your learning space, you should have our Ask DS module in front of you. So I wanted to talk to you today about the importance of your years in college in terms of developing high quality study skills. These are transferable skills for life and work. So if you like, you could consider this to be a 4-year apprenticeship through your freshman years, your sophomore years, on graduation, and then as an employee. So all of the strategies to improve your academic skills are actually those that you are going to take with you into the workplace. So I hope that you're going to find this useful and think about it throughout your studies about what this can add in terms of value to your working life. So these skills that we use in everyday life, whether that be in industry, social care, politics, journalism, media, education, over and above learning about your subject, you need to hone these skills as they underpin all learning. You're likely to take notes in meetings, and it's essential in ensuring that at work you understand the business of your department and that you complete the task given to you by your line manager, that he gives you as part of a team. So that includes also researching, maybe writing up technical or exploratory reports, creating presentations to deliver to potential clients, paperwork, writing position papers, speeches, or technical manuals. So these are the things I want to talk to you about this afternoon: researching and reading, taking notes and summarizing findings, and presenting evidence of your knowledge and your learning, and how this integrates with managing your time and organizing your work. The first thing to bear in mind is, in terms of assessment and examination, you're assessed and examined on the learning outcomes of your program. So one of the first bits of advice I would give you is to go back to each of your modules within your course and really look at the learning outcomes, what you're expected to know by the end of the semester or by the end of the academic year. And that will help to frame your thinking about what it is that you are learning. So what about doing research through reading? When you were in school, you followed a prescribed curriculum, and that's the need to conduct research, and independent reading would have been quite limited. Fact-based learning around specific topics delivered through books and teachers' notes. So now that you're in college, you will continue to learn through this method somewhat and in some disciplines, but you'll also be expected to supplement lecture content with wider reading as required to explore topics in depth. So these require you to research your subjects independently and often to choose what you're going to read, particularly when it comes to journal articles. So there are very good techniques from doing this, and they don't involve starting at page 1 and reading to the end of the book. You should be reading by topic or subject or keywords. So firstly, you should look them up in the index at the back of the book and the contents page and take a note of all the numbers. And then you go to that chapter, and the first thing you do is you read all of the headings and the subheadings first. Then you go back again to the beginning and you look for any diagrams and captions and any keywords that perhaps might be bolded or any shaded boxes with important information in. And then finally, on the third pass, you go back to the beginning and you actually read the chapter. And what this does is it ensures that you actually understand what you're going to read before you read it, so you're not coming to it cold. And actually, that's also a really good technique if you use audio recordings of a journal article or a book chapter. And if these are in your Blackboard account, there's an app, if you like, called Blackboard Ally. It's a black A and a black downward arrow that appear next to items in your Blackboard modules. And you can use that to convert any item into an audio file. And the utility of that is, if you listen to something before you actually engage with reading it, it sets up your understanding. And especially if you think about reading it whilst you're doing something else, and that's often the best way that we learn. So maybe think about listening to something in advance before you start reading it in detail. There are a number of really useful apps that you have available to you. All Trinity students have access to Microsoft 365 products, courtesy of IS Services. And there are a number of built-in features there which will actually help you to read. Read aloud, for example, reads on its own, or within Immersive Reader, which is a set of tools which improve your fluency and comprehension. You could also add Speak. Speak actually reads out selected highlighted text. Narrator is a Windows screen reader that actually reads everything on your screen. And Speech is the built-in accessibility feature in Mac. So I would suggest certainly that you experiment with each of those features to help your reading. We also provide a really helpful piece of technology called Text Help Read and Write. It has a whole host of features. You can see the illustration up there at the top. This is what the toolbar looks like when you've downloaded the software. It sits on your laptop or desktop, this floating toolbar. It will read text aloud, it will create portable audio versions, it will scan text for you. There are a lot of highlighting tools available, and full instructions of how to download and install and activate this software is available in our Ask DS Blackboard module. Another good reason for enrolling. So now I want to move on to taking notes and summarizing findings. This is an essential skill in taking large amounts of material and condensing it into smaller units of meaning. And the point of which is to more easily recognize and make connections between facts and concepts. It's not about rote learning or memorizing. People don't do that in the workplace generally. A good method learnt well in your first year will stand you in good stead, really. So I want to introduce you to something called the Cornell note-taking method. So you can see on the left of your screen here, this is really, I suppose, the instructions for using it. So you draw a margin down the left-hand side of your page. And in that margin, you're writing really key important information, exam questions, chapter numbers, page numbers, main ideas or headings, keywords, formulas, that kind of thing. And in the central part of the page, you're actually taking bullet point notes. And at the bottom, the small part at the bottom that you rule off, there's a summary of what that lecture was about. So to give you an example, this is an example from an English lecture about short story elements. And you can see here the student has elected to utilize that left-hand bar for writing down key questions. And in the notes section, they have their bullet points. And very important here, you're not writing down verbatim every word that the lecturer says. You're writing down the main points. And at the bottom there is a summary of what they learned from that lecture or what that lecture spoke to them about. Now, there are different ways. That's a paper version, and I have made a blank template of this Cornell note-taking method available again in our Ask DS Blackboard module for you to download. But if you are not a real paper person or typing person or pencil and paper person, there are some really useful apps out there. And one I really like is called Notability. It allows you to create a workbook for each topic, if you like, and you can type into it, but you can switch to drawing, you can insert video and audio materials, I use it a lot for conferences, and it's a very effective way of keeping lots of different notes together. And why is this important? It's important because of something called the forgetting curve. We do forget quite easily and quite quickly after we've been introduced to something. So it's really important to revisit it on a regular basis. If you take succinct notes that are stored logically, but particularly these one-page notes, it's very easy to go back to locate them and then to go back and review them. Succinct notes filled in properly are easy to access. An understandable filing system will help you with this, and it means you can regularly review your notes and see how they're all linked together. Another handy way of collating your notes, again, a Microsoft 365 product which you have access to, is Microsoft OneNote. What you can see here is I have created, just up to the top in the left-hand corner then, I created a workbook for each module and then a page for each lecture. So on this lecture, lecture 1, The Origin of Life, I've inserted my Cornell notes that I took. I've inserted an audio file, might be a reminder to myself to read something. And also a related video, could be the video of the lecture notes, could be something else that you found on YouTube. This means that you have a complete multimedia repository of notes all in one place. So again, really getting to grips with that organization. So this comes back to really managing time and organising academic material. This is a fundamental difference between school and university. You're attending lectures and tutorials, engaging with your course material. Nobody is going to check up on you and ask you whether you've actually done the work, or even if you managed to keep up with the reading. Did you manage to find the books that you read? This is really up to you. So it's essential that you complete 3 important tasks: establishing a routine, creating a repository, and checking that you have all your resources. Now, again, in our Ask DS Blackboard module, our occupational therapists have done some excellent videos about establishing a routine. But I would say, from my perspective, the most important thing you can think of, really remind yourself, is that your role as a student is a full-time job. You are a student from Monday to Friday from 9 till 5. You may not have lectures for that whole time, but that is your schedule. And any free space you have in that schedule really should be taken up with readings and note-taking and completing your assignments. So one of the other pieces of advice I'd give you is that to take your timetable from your MyTCD or Blackboard and maybe recreate it in a more visual way so you can actually see where you have spaces, and to actively populate those spaces with tasks. So Monday between 11 and 12 is where you're going to collate all your readings. Thursday between 3 and 5 is when you're actually going to engage with them and read them. And that will ensure that you're really fulfilling your role. So routine includes understanding your timetable and building a work plan around it. Now, creating a repository means deciding how and where you are going to store your materials. You need to go to your course and your module structure, and I would suggest that you recreate that structure for yourself. So just to give you an example of that, you can see here at the top of the page, what I did was I created some folders in my computer with the module name and number, and therefore each document within it also has its own title, which relates exactly to the lecture or the lab or what have you. So when you're creating these within your own computer, by all means, please also connect them to cloud storage such as OneDrive or Google Drive, because if you just leave things solely within your PC and it crashes, then you have lost everything. So everything should be backed up with cloud storage. Whatever you download, whether that be notes or whether it be a journal article or a reading, don't let files sit in your downloads folder. Make sure they are filed into these folders in your storage. Make sure you file them immediately because it's very easy to let things get away from you. I would sort everything out at least once a week. Make sure the names and descriptors you use are easily identifiable, as I've shown you here. And the reason for that is when you're trying to find something and you can type into the search bar, a name of a file you're looking for, and if you've labeled it correctly, then it makes it much, much easier to find. So what about presenting evidence of your knowledge and your learning? Well, this is done mostly in written, but sometimes in spoken format. So essays, reports, blogs, presentations, they require use of precise and academic language, which is not conversational, which is not slangy, using a wide range of sophisticated vocabulary. And over time, you should develop a writing style that has a good flow and tone, and which enables you to demonstrate that you can critically analyze what you've read, present an argument, and draw robust conclusions. And that most definitely is something you will need to do in the workplace. So now is a good time to begin to practice that. In terms of writing skills, again, plenty of tools to help you. Another 365 product, Microsoft Word has built in something called Editor. More sophisticated suite of editing tools these days than when Word was first created. Spelling, grammar, but also clarity and conciseness. It will give you a score on the formality of your writing. And it will also help you to see where your writing could be improved, but also where you might be plagiarizing as well, where this work might appear elsewhere. So I would definitely experiment with Editor within Microsoft Word. Now, whilst we don't have access to a Grammarly subscription because we recommend Editor and 365, what I would suggest you do is to go to Grammarly and add Grammarly into your Firefox. It's free. The beauty of this is that once Grammarly is sitting there as an extension in your browser, anytime you're typing online, whether it be an email or you're filling in forms, anything like that, it will be correcting your spelling and grammar. So that's a really useful free tool to avail of. In Blackboard, and I appreciate that Blackboard's quite complicated if you're not used to it, there are plenty of student guides, student help. You can see them in the central panel when you log into Blackboard, and I really do suggest that you explore everything that Blackboard can do and read those tutorials, especially around assignments and exams and uploading assessments and completing assessments as well online, whether that be a quiz or whether that be engaging in a forum. So again, I'm just reminding you how to access our own Blackboard module. You go to module search, you type in disability service, you click on Ask DS, enroll, and then you submit. And when you go back to your learning space, you will be able to see it in your list of modules. We regularly post announcements, which if you've enrolled will come into your email account. So it's very important to keep an eye on that, although I do appreciate it's really hard for students. You are completely bombarded with emails, so it's tricky. Similarly, student learning development is a service provided to all Trinity students. They provide one-to-one appointments, drop-ins, webinars, and they also have this very useful Blackboard module. So again, go into module search box, type in academic skills 2021-22, enroll yourself, and this will jump into your module listing. So they have advice on everything from study skills to writing, presentation, maths and stats, tackling exams. And you can see here on the left-hand side, workshop recordings and handouts. Now, I know you do get emails about the live workshops that they do, very similar to the one I'm doing now, but they record them and they store them here in these folders. So please do check back regularly. Even if you weren't able to attend one of their webinars, they're very useful. Another feature of Blackboard that you need to get used to is Turnitin. Turnitin is a plagiarism tool. It picks up on situations where your work might have appeared before. It's a piece of software. It refers to plagiarism, refers to taking information and basically presenting it as your own work and not acknowledging other people. This is why referencing is so important. The referencing system used in college is Endnote. So that's a digital system that you can use online, or you can download that piece of software. The library does great training in Endnote, so do visit those pages. So to avoid this, Turnitin provides a score, and it also provides the location of where that writing might have appeared before. Now, I wouldn't get too worried if you see large percentage scores, because quite often that might be to do with references. So do take a look at what it is that Turnitin has highlighted to make sure that you understand where that might have appeared before. So just to finish off, types of assessment used in college. We moved from traditional written examinations in the last year, but it's very likely that we will be going back to those for Christmas exams. This is how you can expect to be assessed in college. You need to ensure that you check email and Blackboard for announcements on this and announcements on any changes to assessment. But in the next slides, I'm just going to take you through a few different types of assessment. So sometimes you might be given, alternative to in-person timed exams, you might be given a take-home exam, and that's essays, tasks, questions, which are provided to you to complete within a set period of time, but which you are able to do at home before you submit. It's not too dissimilar to an open book exam. You get the questions in advance sometimes. Students are allowed to have access to their books and papers to answer the question. So really there's less emphasis here on memorizing, and it's more about, do you understand your subject? Have you read around it? Have you done the research? So that's also quite a common one. Some of you may have online tests. These are usually multiple choice questions. There are particular techniques to answering MCQs. And again, in Ask DS Blackboard, we have some advice on how to tackle multiple choice questions. You might alternatively have an online test, and some students may also have clinical interviews. Some students, mainly in social sciences, could be asked to write a reflective diary or journal. There are specific techniques for this. Certainly student learning can help you with that. And indeed, often in economics and business, for example, case studies of real world problems. So generally, when the disability service members of staff meet with students, it's usually via Teams, although we are going back onto campus. Myself, in terms of academic support, I'm usually on campus 1 day a week, but most of my sessions are online remotely via Teams if you make an appointment directly in the diary. Requesting support, academic support from the service, we first suggest that you enroll in Ask DS and you explore all of the relevant sections in the module. Thereafter, if you still feel that you need very specific advice and guidance, you should contact your disability officer and discuss these. And then we may send you a self-assessment checklist for pre-meeting before you attend your one-to-one session. So any queries at all you have about any of the technology or anything I've said, you can send an email to askds@tcd.ie. So I'm just going to end this recording. Okay.